Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PTC podcast. I'm here today with Rose O'Donovan. How are you doing, Rose?
I'm good. Thank you, Keith. Thank you for having me here.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for coming down, making the trip. A fellow old country Irish person.
Cork.
Oh, we were trying to think. Nobody said Cork. What did you say? Oh, you didn't guess? Galway and Kildare were guessed earlier. I was telling Tomas that you're coming in. And then we got one of your videos up and we were trying to place your accent.
West Cork.
West Cork?
West Cork, yeah. I've been here 13 years, so it's mellowed down a bit.
It's really mellowed out for West Cork. You were... Kildare and Galway was between the two. And I had no idea.
Wow.
I had no idea. Because before we watched the video, I thought you were from Cavan with a softer accent. And then as soon as I heard the accent, I was like, no, it's not Cavan. It's definitely not Cavan. West Cork, what part of West Cork?
I grew up in Schull. Down near the Mizzen head on the Mizzen Peninsula.
My grandmom and her family are from West Cork. I'm trying to remember where.
It's a big place.
Beyond
Skibbereen, Ballyhob. Cobb H. That's what the Americans call it, Cobb H. Cove would be a little bit east of the city, so yeah.
My mom's screaming at the phone now, or her telling me where West Cork is. Sorry, Mom. Anyway, we're here to have a chat with Rose, not about West Cork, but we will listen to her soft Irish accent, because it was also accused of being soft, a soft accent. So not a typical West Cork, otherwise we probably wouldn't be able to understand you. But no, you are pretty renowned in Dubai as cardiovascular expert and specifically breathing. Breathing is a bit of a hot topic now, and you've also got a pretty interesting dissertation which we can get to, hot on trend. Why don't you tell us how did you find your way 13 years ago to making the move across here?
I came here on holidays and it wasn't planned, and I had a couple of job interviews and I went back to Ireland and I moved over here 13 years ago. And back then it was Dubai was not the same city it is today, and there was no regulation and no gyms, and there was very little physios. I was one of the first people trying to find foam rollers.
Right.
That's how far back it was, and it moved at a rapid pace. And I think the move in the rapid pace and how gyms expanded with maybe less qualified or less regulated trainers that we would have been exposed to, say in UK, Ireland, wherever you've worked, it was a bit of a shock. And now I can see, I hadn't planned to talk about this, but it's, whatever somebody has done in their past, like the mysteries in the history. So however someone has trained and however they've adapted. But I must say Dubai is one place that has rapidly expanded in the fitness market. We don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing because the trends are in, all the trends are there.
Yeah, so you came
in
2011?
2010, and I worked for a couple of different companies, and I more or less started working for myself in 2011. I worked for Body Hack, which is one of the main educating companies here for health and fitness professionals. I work privately in Sharjah, and I currently work with Joint Space Clinic, where I see a lot of different clients and patients. And I've worked for a couple of education companies here. I still work for 2 international education companies, so I travel quite a bit with work. A lot before COVID. I've done less travel now, and I work for Oxygen Advantage. That's the breathing one. So I've been lucky. I feel really blessed. I've done a huge amount of work here that I would not have been able to do if I'd stayed in Ireland. And it happened as it happened. I didn't plan everything, but I was exposed to so much here. And when I came here, I was actually trying to do my master's, and I dropped it. And I've actually picked it up a couple of years ago, so I'm finishing that at the moment.
It's interesting. We were only chatting today about trying to figure out your path and your future and learn what course to go on and what education is the right one for you.
Yeah.
If you had somebody in the room who was around the 21-year-old mark and interested to figure out her path in university, what advice would you give her?
If they wanted to go into health and fitness?
If they weren't quite sure, but something in the health and sports business world.
If it was in the health and sports business world, probably at this stage straight to behavior change models. they would have to, it has to incorporate some sort of psychology, because I guess I'm working over 20 years. My first degree is computer science. My master's that I'm currently doing is clinical science of obesity and weight management. And I've done a huge amount of work in breathing and cardiovascular conditioning. And if we don't have behaviour change, Keith, in the human population today, you can't move anything anywhere, whether it's a business that's a restaurant or whether it's something that you're trying to do in fitness. So I would do that first. And we are at a stage, I think, that we need to look at lifestyle disease and the way we live and the impact it has on our health. So often people say to me, and it's not always very nice the way they say it, oh, obesity, that's very interesting. And you can tell from someone's tone how they feel about that population. And one of the reasons I chose it, there's far more sick and unwell people today than there are healthy people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guaranteed to be working for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a much more rewarding experience. And you can go into sports science and do all sorts of interesting stuff, but we're not living in a way where that is going to be our general population. And we're not always lucky when we're in sports to work with real athletes. We get more general population is what I work with. And I would say behaviour change, lifestyle disease, and really take a really deep dive into the nervous system if you want to go down the route of human, if they want to get into like health and fitness, it would be nervous system and human biology, and not necessarily the top sports science degree or sports performance. Yeah,
interesting. So everything you've just said there is like you talking about your passion for being on the front line and dealing with people, talking to the patient, talking to the client. But you started with a computer science degree?
Yes.
So ultimately, you don't have to have it planned out from the very beginning. And I'm looking behind the camera at Destiny as she's smiling back, laughing.
No way.
Because we had this chat this morning. So for anybody listening, Destiny is just giggling in the corner by herself now. Because Rose has just put her mind at ease and told her anything she wants to do, she can do. She's only 21. Do what you want and you'll figure it out later. Okay.
The answers will come. It gets put in front of you. Follow what you're interested in. Whatever you work at, make sure you've got a personal interest in it. And I deal with so many people, and I'm sure you're the same, Keith, but when we see people who work at something they like or that has a personal interest, they will be successful.
And then you didn't know that at 21.
No way.
Exactly. That's the key to the conversation, is you don't have to have it mapped out. Just keep stepping forward. Because you just said all those different jobs you've had. What do you reckon you would be doing in Ireland if you didn't move over in 2010?
Not 100% sure, but probably the same line of work, definitely. Maybe more institutionalized if I was in Ireland clinically, or but I think I would still be in the same line, but I would not have had the same exposure I have to the populations here. I've been able to take on loads of extra courses for work, as in to educate myself, and I think the more exposure I had to different populations, the more I went into the things like I went into with CV training and breathing and lifestyle disease. And then I'm really glad that I did not finish my master's 10 years ago and I'm doing it now, because the curriculum I'm exposed to now is far more beneficial to what I'm doing, and it's extremely relevant to my current work, and it's just I feel really lucky, and so I'm excited about what I do on a daily basis.
Okay, so let's go down that route, because there's two ways I want to go there, either the breathing or the masters. But let's talk about your masters, because you speak quite passionately about it just now. So what's the masters? What's it on?
The masters is, the title of the masters is Clinical Science of Obesity and Weight Management. So I finished 5 or 6 modules in person in the UK, and I'm on my research project, and I am doing patient experience of pharmacology with multidisciplinary care in the treatment of obesity, and I'm doing it as a qualitative study. So I'm interviewing different patient groups from different backgrounds, and they're all on GLP medication. And multidisciplinary care means that they are partaking in one of 5 elements, and that would be dietitian or qualified nutritionist, because they're quite different, qualified and professional exercise guidance. Doctors follow up or consultations, or they're involved in the clinic. Psychological care, so they're in therapy or counselling. Behaviour change models and wearing wearable devices, like devices that track your behaviour and promote behaviour change. So we're tracking the multidisciplinary care element and their experience on GLP medication.
I'm just about hanging on, following all of that. So GLP is the weight loss drugs.
They're the weight loss drugs, the famous ones. Yeah, they're all over the market.
And you've got a bias towards one?
I don't have a bias towards one. Mounjaro would be the most common one that people have heard, and if listeners are listening, it's like Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro. The older drugs would be like Saxenda. Lifestyle drugs are your glucaphage, metformin, statins for cholesterol, medications for heart disease. So these are all lifestyle drugs that people are on today in a much higher number than we actually are led to believe, and they're prescribed pretty heavily to people who are overweight. So when you look at BMI, it's like above 27. But for the GLPs, there's certain criteria that they must meet, and GLPs are actually type 2 diabetic medication, but their side effect is weight loss. So you're deemed overweight if your BMI is above 27, obese if your BMI is above 30. And we're in the fitness industry, so I'm taking it for granted that everyone knows if we're dealing with rugby players or heavy weightlifters, exactly, BMI is irrelevant to that.
My BMI is overweight, obese.
Yeah, and it's, people bring this up all the time, but BMI is a very relevant marker, but we know it, that we can look at it subjectively. In our industry, doctors do not look at it subjectively, and the other marker we should be looking at is waist-hip ratio for lifestyle disease. So the drugs are the ones that are all in the market, and that's what is being prescribed heavily to those populations at the moment. The elements I really focused on is the MDC care. That's the multidisciplinary care. That's what you and I do on a daily basis, Keith. And that's showing, I'm getting the data that I actually want to get, that we are very, very valuable in what we do. And breathe, you said you're going to go down one route, but anyone that suffers from any kind of lifestyle disease, overweight, or any performance issue, even if they are lean and athletic, they have a breathing issue without any shadow of a doubt usually.
Say that last bit. If they are lean and athletic?
Even if they're lean and athletic and suffering from a performance issue, which might be disturbed sleep, or performance is not going on that linear progression they want, or struggling with body composition, there will be a breathing issue there, because breathing directly affects the mitochondrial health in the body. And whether you're lean or overweight, the breathing issue is something that has to be looked at. And we were never taught that. I'm sure you weren't taught that in.
It's one of those things, isn't it? Like when you talk about the body, you start to talk about one system, and then you have to touch on another system, and then you have to actually go to the next system. Like if you want to run, great, we need your muscles, we need your joints, and we need your bones, and we need your heart, and we need your lungs, and we need your food. But so nothing works in isolation. It's kind of like what you're saying. But going back to the GLPs, because this might be interesting for people who've heard a lot of these buzzwords. What does GLP stand for, and what's its layman's term process?
It's a glucagon-like peptide drug, and in the layman's terms, it's a drug that you inject into yourself once a week. It affects your gastric emptying. It regulates your appetite. And it's, it basically stops you. It's like for people who really suffer, will stop the food noise. So if somebody's listening, they never stop thinking about food. They always have a food issue. They can't handle diet plans. They've been on every diet under the sun. They're heavily overweight. They'll know that they're either thinking about food, or they're thinking about their next meal. That's the food noise. Or somebody who just continually overeats, because when we look at people's appetite and the appetite regulation, people really, really suffer, where the people in the health and fitness industry do not understand that kind of suffering. So the GLPs are really great at regulating those signals to the brain. There are side effects, but it depends on how fast or slow they are prescribed the medication, because there's different doses. So it's a drug that it's going to regulate your appetite. It's going to slow down your gastric emptying. It will cause constipation or diarrhea. There are some side effects that are, they're not dangerous drugs, so to speak. There is plenty research done on them, but they're early in the research. So we need longer to see long term, but at the same time they are quite safe, and if they're prescribed under supervision for the right populations, they are giving incredible leases of life to people who actually truly suffer with weight and obesity. Most of my client base are on GLPs, and they've been able to start looking at things like their psychological side of why they behave the way they do around food. Once you get some of the weight off the body, you can start looking at what you said about joints, muscles, all the stuff you need for running, and plus the breathing system. So they are for certain populations. And if somebody has 10 kilos to lose, put in the work and just go and lose the weight. That's not a GLP medication issue, really.
I think because what's key to all of this is it's almost like this is actual science. This does work. This is not a little fad, or it's not a infomercial at 3 a.m. Get these weight loss drugs. It's not a body temperature rising fat burner. It's actually it comes from, I can't remember the name. What's the Norwegian company?
Mounjaro.
Yeah, what's Nordisk?
Novardisk.
Novardisk.
Yeah.
So they were their goal was to, in the 100 years ago era, was to get rid of diabetes, or to make diabetes more manageable. And they pushed on with insulin. And then what they learned from these drugs and these peptides was one of the massive things that people kept reporting over and over again was weight loss. So then they opened up this weight loss department, and they realized that yes, it's really good, it helps, they figured out the system for it. But one of the things you said, I've had clients of mine tell me once they've gone on it, is the food noise thing was the bit they weren't expecting. So one of the guys told me that he's a father of 2 little boys, I think, and he would wake up in the morning. If he got delayed in the morning because of the kids, he would decide to himself, all right, well, there's no point in me going to the gym at 7:15, because I usually go at 7. If I go at 7:15, I won't finish till 8:15, so I'll just sack it off. Then he'd just skip the gym, he'd go to work for 8:30, and he'd spend all day furious with himself for skipping the gym, that he would just go and eat crap all day, stack on a load of weight. Fast forward, he's a couple of weeks into this drug, and all that noise is turned off. He said when he doesn't go to the gym, he just goes later. He doesn't let it get to him. If he can't go to the gym, and he doesn't have that fuck it gene where he's just chucking food down him all day, he said his appetite is a little bit less, which he was expecting, but he wasn't expecting that level of like just calmness in his day-to-day life. And he said it was a pretty immediate switch. We have got other people here who are taking it and who are just losing weight, and because they're in the gym, obviously we're helping them with the muscle maintenance, with the joint integrity maintenance, keeping their body robust. But I think it's a really interesting time, because it's almost like they finally invented the magic pill that people might need to take.
It can be the magic pill. There are plenty of people taking it as a magic pill. But what I would say, from what you said, the person like that, the man who's the food noise is down, this is a point that either his GP or even you, Keith, can say, right, start to see somebody who can change the behavior now, to start finding the reasons why he would hit that effort button and eat all day. So, like, if somebody is experiencing the great results they get in GLPs, it's not enough. They must go and do the psychological interventions that are needed, or the behavior change models, or stay in the gym. And the other thing I just will touch on is that massive misconception about that it's a weight loss drug that just causes weight loss. If I go through a massively stressful event in my life and reduce my calorie intake, I will lose weight in both muscle and fat mass. If you do a VLC diet, like a very low calorie, you go on keto, you take out carbs, everyone loses weight, and that weight is both muscle mass and fat mass if it is rapidly lost. So the drug isn't targeting muscle in the body, because some people are really scared about this, and that's where the dose should be kept small enough. There's 2.55, 7.5. Some people go in and experience the dose increasing every single month. I don't generally recommend that per se. I'm not a medical doctor, but I've been working with people now over 12 months, and sometimes a slower, smaller dose, and let the weight plateau and stagnate. to allow your body to build muscle. And when somebody's lost the weight, there will be that time they have to put back on a little bit of weight to allow their nervous system to be safe to start losing again or to build muscle mass. Because you'll see, what I've seen is people's training performance and output drops hugely once there's too much weight lost. Or you think of the structures. If somebody's been overweight or heavy for a long time, something like rib cage or shoulder or lower back, once you take the weight off of that and those joints start moving, it's really painful for them.
Right, okay.
So slower is better. And if constant weight loss is not good for the body because it's a stressor. So I would just say, if your listeners are listening, go slower and address the underlying health issues and be patient. And
how do you, obviously, I'm sure you can go on the deep dark web and get some of these drugs posted to your house, but is there a specific doctor that you would recommend people search out or meet with?
Definitely. There are some great GPs in clinics. There's a clinic
what kind of doctor, like a gastro?
Endocrinologist.
Right.
You can go, like the main one that's here is Glucare. That's the full-on service of, they're an integrated diabetes centre, and they have a lot of follow-ups, and they do proper testing for liver and bloods, and they will check everything first. If your doctor is just prescribing it to you, I often have clients come in and say, my doctor recommended this, and they're usually quite upset because they might be in that category of 10 to 15 kilos to lose. And they're like, I want to do it alone. I don't want to be on medication. But if it is something where you're pre-diabetic, you've started to suffer hugely with lifestyle disease, there might be hormonal issues, sleep issues, joint pain, then go to somewhere like Glucare or an obesity and weight loss department in one of the hospitals, because they actually will run the relevant blood tests and the relevant liver tests that they need to see what state they're in. And then they can regulate the doses and they can check every month. Don't go to the pharmacy and buy over the counter like some people are. Yeah.
I don't know if that's the case all over the world, but in Dubai it seems like that's a possibility for some people.
It is, and we're on a podcast. It's not not covered. Yeah, it's possible here. It is, and people are doing that, and it's not a good idea to take this drug without a doctor's supervision and then go and get yourself a trainer. You should be resistance training while you are losing weight. It's not a quick fix, and it's not magic. And within a year, you probably will gain back the weight if you haven't fixed your lifestyle.
But that's it. It just sometimes it just gives people the chance, doesn't it? It just breaks the circle that they can be in just a little bit, and then take one of the stressors off their shoulders, and then allow them.
That's why I'm pro the drug, because I've worked with people even when I was in Ireland 13 to 15 years ago, I had an obese population as one of my client bases, and it was horrendously hard to work with them, and they never get the break they want to or need to. And when you hear them talk personally about what it's like to try and shop for clothes, to have relationships, to go about their business on a daily basis, when we look at data of how they're discriminated against in job interviews, in public transport, it's, we might struggle with a couple of kilos every so often during the year, Keith, but that's like, imagine you wake up every day and you've got 30 kilos to lose or 40 kilos to lose. It's hell. So yeah, I'm pro the drug, definitely pro. Yeah, no, look, I sort of look at it, and without having the in-depth knowledge probably that you have, I look at it as, if you imagine you arrive at the scene of an accident in a trauma situation, what moving a person and risking their neck might be what saves their life to keep them alive. If they're bleeding, or if they're suffocating, if there's a fire, you don't know if moving them is the right thing, but at least it's keeping them alive. It's giving them a better chance. So anything that can keep people effectively, to exaggerate and to make it a bit morbid, if we can keep people alive a little bit longer, give them a better chance of then course correcting, improve the quality of life for a period of time, give them a better chance of course correcting, then I'm all for it. I definitely wouldn't recommend Google searches and that kind of stuff, though, because that can just get, obviously, all the wrong results. So you talked about those 5 categories: the doctors, the nutritionists, the dietitians. What was the other one? Psychology or behavior change intervention. Change. That's a lot of different types of people. So are you interviewing and collecting data from all of them? No, I'm interviewing the patients, and some of the patients I'm interviewing have all 5 of them in their care. And this is where it's more accessible to some people than others. But minimum, they will have one of those as an intervention. And if to go back to that very first question that you asked about what would you tell somebody to do, eventually in your career, you need to be multi-qualified and multifaceted. So I can do the dietitian's role, I can do a behavior change role with CBT, and I can do the exercise role. But it's taken many years to have that qualification. So some people, they may have to see 5 separate people, but it's better to try and get something a little bit more integrated. But yes, the patients are seeing 1 and up to 5 of those individuals to help them.
And when you get the results, like when you finally tallied it all up, what sort of picture are you expecting to see?
I will present quantitative data on patients of intake and in the middle of their journey at the end. But in a qualitative setting, Keith, you take the patient's experience, which is very difficult for me because I'm science-based. I want to see all the figures and data. And what we are trying to look at is their experience, because we usually come at problems like these, like you should move more, you should eat less, and this is what you should do. And doctors, especially medical doctors, that is their answer also. So getting a qualitative experience is, I have to actually take the data they're giving me in their words and thematically analyze it. So the themes will come out afterwards. And I've seen a lot of the themes already being extracted, and it is very heavily leaning towards exercise was the greatest thing that I could do. They have exercised all their lives. Certain types were better than others. When they were ready for psychological interventions and behavior change models, that was also a very close second. And there are different perceptions on what it is. But the data, if we look at the quantitative data, you will see huge change in terms of weight, fat mass, body composition, blood markers mainly on pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes, cholesterol, heart rates will be something that would be that would drastically change, like resting heart rates, and then just general lifestyle of what they do differently over the course of a year of how things have changed.
Are you noticing any specific age groups? Or
I have my age group is varied. We have a slightly younger population in Dubai, I guess, but I've gotten a couple of, they're not older. The oldest I have is in her 60s. Some in their 50s, and then I've got quite a younger population as well, which is, I'd say, like to people, teens? Listen up, to the listeners, listen up. If I'm interviewing people in their 20s and 30s, and the interviews are based on an obese population, this is where it becomes frightening, because most of them have suffered their entire life with this. But there is a huge population of teens here. I don't have any teens in my studies. I didn't go for that. But if you look at the data, I know there are kids as young as 12 having bariatric surgery.
Yeah. No, that's
and if you want to look at breathing, I've talked a lot on breathing before in different interviews. If you've got children, breathing is the first thing you should look at with them, so that they don't become overweight, because a child who doesn't breathe well, doesn't sleep well, they don't learn well or play well, and you're going to become stressed. So if we look at anybody that is overweight or not, playing or functioning well, generally they're breathing from their mouth, and their breathing is an issue, both
so
at
that's
rest.
That's what you'd be looking for. You're looking for someone, a young teen, young child who's just simply mouth breathing?
Yes, and maybe not able to exercise all that well, or sleeps, doesn't sleep well, tangled sheets, especially young kids. If we talk about breathing alone, it's the younger you look at them, the better. And the only reason I look at kids is because I saw so many adults struggle, including myself, with breathing. And by the time I fixed my own, I realised there was a lot of issues that were too late to fix. And then when we look at the parent population coming in and kids today, and this is when we, it's directly links to obesity and overweight. Our world has changed, our diet has changed, our transport has changed, school play has changed, where people, they don't chew hard enough foods, they don't chew long enough, your head and posture is dropped forward into phones and tablets and computers, so the airway is compromised. and people are not playing enough anymore. So they're not, physical exercise.
Like a lot of these things, what you're saying now often gets mixed up in like, oh my God, this is another thing I have to worry about. You know, my head in the right position, my tangled sheet, like where it's never ending. But then there's certain stuff that's like fundamental and easy wins, you know, if you can figure it out, that it's not just like, all right, and also Diet Coke gives you cancer, and also if you stay in the sun for 16 minutes, not 15 minutes, you're at risk. You know, there's those scientific studies that say everything's bad for you, live in a bubble, don't move, and don't breathe through your mouth. But it's also like, there's so many more, and the Oxygen Advantage book is one book I read, as well as the James Nestor book, Breathe, which are two books that I definitely recommend. Start with the James Nestor one. It's a little bit softer on the science, and then if you like that, go for the Patrick McKeown Oxygen Advantage book. It's a bit more technical, but it's a nice next step.
And the Breathing Cure is even worse because it's a huge book and it's very technical.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, Breath is a page turner by James Nestor. I love that as well.
Yeah. And what he does as well in the first bit is he talks about breathing, jaw anatomy, and it makes it very simple. If you get bored of it halfway through, you've probably already got the most you need to get from the first third. But just explain a little bit on the tangled sheets thing, because that's a big sign you could look out for if you're a parent.
For parents,
what does that mean?
And I'm going to talk about easy wins as well, because I do 100% get that this is like another thing you've got to do. It's too much going on. Tangled sheets would be where children are, if you've got children who are bedwetting, nightmares, or they wake up in a completely different position, they're tangled around the bed, or the sheets are there, it means they've had this disturbed sleep, so they've generally kind of moved a lot, or they're not restful, and they will be mouth breathers. So parents can simply check at nighttime. Kids go to bed early, they might be going after them, just come in, and they can simply close their mouth, Keith. They don't have to do anything, just lip seal. If you've got a baby, it's like a lip seal. And there's lots of stuff we could go into, like how they're born and are they breastfed, and how it affects the jaw. But with young children before 6, try to encourage, the easy wins are sit upright, eat at a table. These are like really old school stuff, but stack the rib cage over the pelvis, stack your jaw on the airway, and make chewing a game, like how many times you can chew your food. Somebody said, oh, this is obsessive, but it's not. It's the jaw has to work for the TMJ. And if somebody wants to say, why is this so important? The fascia of the tongue goes all the way down to the heart. And this is where we start looking at the cardiovascular function of the lungs and the heart and our mouth. And our mouth is the microbiome of your mouth will have a huge effect on the microbiome of your gut. So we want to keep it healthy, which means we need to keep it closed. You need to exercise it enough, and you need to chew your food. And for parents, kids nobody has teeth in their stomach. So the way we're rapidly swallowing and chewing today doesn't do us any favors. And then allowing the nasal cavity to open, and to make sure you have restful sleep at night, make sure that the brainstem and the brain is getting enough oxygen and repair. And the only way we can get enough oxygen to repair in your body is to have slower breathing, so your blood can release to the tissues and cells. So the faster we breathe, if you inhale, your heart rate goes up. If you have a heart rate monitor on and you watch yourself inhaling, the heart rate will go up. If we exhale, the heart rate goes down. So we want that for children as well when they're sleeping, restful sleep at nighttime. So with parents, I'll often do things like get the kids to gargle water as a game after they've cleaned their teeth, sitting at the table, seeing how many times they can chew. And kids are generally very competitive and they love games. The steps game from the Bateco breathing school, where they pinch their nose and hold and they're doing steps. I don't recommend some of these like just go off and do them. It's like give me a call or give somebody who knows what they're doing and they're qualified if they need to work on them. But if they're thinking, oh, what can I do? It's promote better behavior in terms of sitting down, chewing food properly, sleeping properly, mouths closed. Don't allow them hanging their head into a computer for hours to distract them. Allow them to physically exercise, especially in water. Swimming is the best thing they can teach them. And these are activities that are, they're no longer there for a lot of people. fun, socialization, laughter, and you know, proper sports play, like play sports. Don't push them into certain activities. Just get them into sports where they're physically active from a very, very young age.
A lot of the stuff you're saying now is like pages and pages of explanations in these books. You know, like you're hitting, I know what you're talking about. So you're hitting so many massive points so quickly, then the next one, the next one, the next one, that you can take your time, get one of those books, get Breathe by James Nestor or The Oxygen Advantage, and read through those, because it explains why gargling water is important. It explains why the jawbone anatomy is important. To close your mouth, let your tongue come forward, push air through your nostrils. The nitric oxide through your nostrils expands your blood vessels, like all of those. There's loads of this science, very well explained in those books.
Jaws is the other book for parents. And if parents were worried, or they had kids with, say, poorly formed teeth or crooked teeth, the reason we're talking about breathing in kids is so their jaw and face can form properly and they don't have that long face syndrome. So once you have the mouth closed and they're breathing through their nose and they're sleeping well and they're swallowing. So if you're listening to the podcast, close your mouth, put your tongue to the roof of your mouth and swallow a couple of times, and see how much work you've got to do through your throat rather than using your face. So if your child swallows and their face gets all scrunched up, it means they do not have a good swallowing pattern, and they may grow with their face growing long and down, or they'll have bags under their eyes. So parents can listen to this and say, oh yeah, my kid has that. And it's you can just start to practice. Are they sleeping with their mouth closed at night? The chewing, the gargling, that they can close their mouth, that they can swallow well. And these are normal things. And I always say it, I'd hate to be a parent today. If you've got two parents who are working full time, and then they start hearing all these things they have to do for your kids, but they're being promoted soft foods, and you know, computers are addictive, our phones are addictive. It's a very hard battle for them.
So taking that on as like all those things are what you should be doing as a kid. There's a bunch of adults listening to this who aren't kids, and they didn't do that as a kid, or they don't know if they're mouth breathers, or they don't know anything from the adult perspective. What's the low-hanging fruit that somebody can do as an adult who's, say, restless sleep, which is so very, very common? Because let's say if we start with fixing sleep through breathing, will set you up for making better decisions through the day. If we just take that as a rule, let's assume.
Yes. I was on, that sounds like I'm blowing my own trumpet, but I was on Helen Farmer's show, and I'll never forget, a man called in and he said, I wish I'd known, and I wish my parents knew about how fundamental proper breathing was when I was a child, because every single thing you've listed I struggle with. And he said his life was, you know, very difficult. So if you're an adult and you're mouth breathing or you're exhausted, and the low-hanging fruit, definitely sleep. It's like fix your sleep first, and you'll know you're not breathing well if you wake up thirsty. You wake up many times during the night, and it's normal to wake up. It's normal to wake up, go to the bathroom, and go back to sleep. I don't think anybody sleeps through the night completely peacefully. So waking up is normal as long as you're going back to sleep, but you shouldn't wake up with a dry mouth, and you shouldn't wake up exhausted. And getting your mouth closed, and I'm conscious to say, I don't want to say to anyone, tape your mouth to get it closed at night. You actually have to see, is your tongue posture and is the swallow pattern okay, and, you know, having something like sleep apnea tested. What I would say over fixing the sleep would be physical exercise with your mouth closed first, because that will promote nasal breathing, and it will open up. I have a lot of people even online, and once they start exercising with their nose, they start complaining of the pain and the cold they feel inside their nostril. It's a use it or lose it organ, like anything else in the body. So when we start using something that hasn't been used in a while, it might feel uncomfortable, or it might start to drain out or detoxify. So I would say physical exercise with your mouth closed, which may just be a walk. It might, you know, if you look at runners, their mouths are hanging open. It causes massive dehydration in the body. You're using a lot more glycogen unnecessarily, so you end up feeling maybe okay afterwards, because there's that heightened hormonal state, and then you're exhausted, and that's where you see, like, the poor decisions you said. People have poor decisions when they are overly stressed, whether it's at nighttime or during exercise.
I remember I ran a couple of marathons, and whichever door opened, and I started going down this breathing route, and one of the things I started to do was trying to run slowly with my mouth closed. And what happened for the first many weeks was my right nostril was just slamming shut, and I was trying to force everything through my left nostril, and I had to really like exercise the muscle that flares your nostrils to keep it open, because every time I breathed in quickly, on the right cheek was so weak it just went pop and closed. So I was like so I had to really like get that muscle strong enough first to stay open, because it was such a, like you said, use it or lose it. But this was just on the muscle perspective. So then once that righted itself, now I can run at a slow intensity with my mouth closed. And I know, relative to my heart rate on my watch, when my mouth starts to open, I'm typically creeping up into zone 3. So now I can judge by my respiratory rate and by the demand that I need to, or knows what zone I'm in, which is really helpful without having to keep looking at my watch. But there's something else I was going to say.
I'll keep it going while you're thinking what you're going to say. What you're talking about is so important to the longevity of your health. So when you say you're doing these longer runs, and if listeners are listening, you need to be able to exercise a certain amount with your mouth closed, period. And whenever you want or to incorporate into the training, yes, you can exercise with your mouth open, and I do encourage anaerobic efforts and big powerful efforts, because that's different and there's a different stimulus. But most people today cannot do that longer duration nasal breathing. And with the way you were describing your nostrils, I probably would ask, did you have more pain or injuries on your right side at the time? And what you can do is also you can block the nostrils. So if you're struggling with one side shut, I'll often block the left and leave the right in use, and you just lower the performance of whatever you're doing until that whole side wakes up. And it's an uncomfortable thing to go through, but I'm sure you feel, I know I feel, and my clients feel really good once it is kind of functioning better. Oh yeah,
now it's fine. At the time, I can't remember the injury thing. It was quite a while ago. I don't think so, but maybe. But I had to really like make a real face, because the typical effort to flare your nostrils wasn't enough. But if I really I could keep them open. So for the first however many weeks, but it was ages, it was like, oh no, it's happening again. It would just close straight away. And then also, as a little veteran advice with this, it gets very mucousy.
Yes.
So you have to sometimes clear yourself. So either have a little hanky, or just be making sure you're not running with a running partner beside you, because it might make a scene.
I would say not to be don't be afraid of that, because a lot of people think it's don't be precious, and don't suck it back in, blow it out. It's better to get the nasal passages cleared properly, and you will improve your mitochondrial health so much by doing this. And we are a bit veteran, we've been here 10-13 years, I think we're both in our 40s, but if you think of long-term health and longevity, you have to include this type of work in your training.
It also helps you stay in, I think, zone 2, based on what you touched on real quick. You said when you quicken your respiratory system, your heart rate goes up.
Yeah.
So if you can slow if you can slow the pace that your lungs work at, your heart rate and your nervous system will stay that a little bit more relaxed. It'll stay in a lower beat per minute range. Whereas if you start to breathe really fast, and a separate thing, it kind of panics your nervous system. The heart rate goes up a couple of beats, which is absolutely not what you need when you're running, especially in the heat in Dubai. You want to keep everything down nice and low. But what I was going to say was, you mentioned going to the toilet during the night. Now, I can't remember the exact science, but in one of the books they explain that mouth breathing causes your system to not, there's a little like 2 or 3 step chain reaction that I can't remember, but after that, then basically your organs don't get told it's time to sleep. So while you are asleep in half of your body, like in your brain, your organs, including your kidneys, are still processing. Therefore your bladder fills, therefore you wake up in the middle of the night, therefore you may not sleep throughout the night. If you can swap that to nasal breathing throughout the night, it encourages your whole system to go into sleep mode. Not necessarily shut down, because that would mean dead, but go into sleep mode. So your kidneys don't continue as much processing, your bladder doesn't fill up as quick, and therefore you should get longer. You might still wake up 6 hours later, not 3, but it's, when I read that, and the science is there, he puts it in neatly into a paragraph. I remember thinking, wow, you would never think that throughout the day, if I mouth breathe, that it's going to make me go to the toilet at 2 a.m. more than if I close my mouth and breathe through my nose. So that's another hidden gem that's in one of the, I think it's in the Breathe James Nestor book.
Anyone that's mouth breathing is going to wake up continually during the night because of the, listeners can just open their mouth and take a few breaths through your mouth and see how that constriction feels on the broncho airways, and then the dehydration. It just gets very drying. So your body's kind of screaming out for a different stimulus, and it's like close your mouth.
Yeah. It also keeps your mouth drier, and then you don't lose as much moisture, and you don't have to, you don't get as dehydrated, which is really, again, another really important thing for Dubai. So while it sounds like a massive thing, there's actually so many knock-on benefits to
and
nasal
dental
breathing.
health.
Yeah, so the jaw thing is interesting because it keeps your jaw tight against your neck if you're mouth breathing, whereas if you're nasal breathing, it drives your jaw and your chin forward.
Yes, it will form properly for the upper palate. The upper palate will be wide enough. And I would say even more so now that I've learned even more that mouth breathing, and it goes along with the gum disease, poor microbial health of the mouth. And then when you think of the amount of research that's coming out in the gut and the second brain, and this is also going into people who are struggling with weight, obesity, lifestyle disease, their gut health is very poor. And then if you have a poor gut health, you're definitely going to have halitosis or poor microbial health of the mouth, which is swollen gums that bleed when you brush your teeth, the dry mouth syndrome you wake up in the morning if you've been mouth breathing, or people who maybe talk for the entire day, Keith. Like some people would have a job that actually promotes mouth breathing. But for the development of the jaw, and then even if you're an adult and you've got that droopy jaw, the TMJ, because like imagine you want to get someone to squat or deadlift, and you want the diaphragm and the pelvic floor. This is a whole system, and that's why it gets more and more important that swallowing is there, the jaw position is there, and that we can actually, get our airways open.
One of the things, because you're the go-to breathing person that I recommend. Like people ask me sometimes, and I'm just like, oh, you're telling me. They'll ask me any question, they'll give me their little mini history. I'm like, oh, you're screaming out this is a breathing issue. I'm like, look, speak to Rose. I've done your course, but I'm like, I don't use it enough to be so hot on the do this, then this kind of stuff. So I just send them to you. But one of the things that we did was in that course, the oxygen advantage with you was the altitude mask. So I get asked a lot with the mountain stuff. They've read somewhere that oxygen mask helps you with altitude training. And I'm like, guys, it in theory, in science, it does technically, but there's a really intense protocol that you have to go through. It's not just bang it on and go do your squats and deadlifts. You actually have to use it, and I was quite surprised how difficult that was. But that works on a whole other level. So what I spent 8 years thinking was that the oxygen mask, and this is those altitude masks that people put on. It looks like the guy Bane from Batman. It shuts down the amount of air that you're getting into your system, and I was kind of like, oh, it reduces the amount of air, therefore you've got to breathe harder, so you're working kind of musculoskeletal. It doesn't do, I didn't think it did anything physiological, and I kind of poo-pooed it, and I thought anybody wearing it in the gym, like there used to be a guy in a gym who wore it, and he just run up and down the corridor in the gym, and I was like, what is that guy doing? Like real judgy me over here. He definitely wasn't using it right, but he was trying to make some beneficial gain with his health, so fair play. But it's all to do with the carbon dioxide tolerance. So how can you touch on that in a nutshell?
So the mask training or altitude training,
because it does work in a way.
It does work, and it's hypercapnic hypoxic training basically. So we're allowing you to breathe less basically. So number one, you need to be healthy and you need to be a good breather before you start putting a mask on. And you don't need the mask. We can do this with breath holds and movement. We can do it in water. There's lots of ways of doing it. But it does work. The mask you're talking about has a resistance grill on the front. So your mouth is still closed and you can do this nasally. And we take the resistance down levels where you're able to breathe less. So you're breathing less air. Carbon dioxide is going up, so that's the hypercapnic part, high carbon dioxide in the body, and that forces the blood to release oxygen to the tissues and cells. And this is like the same thing that happens when we go to altitude and we come back down, and we can, we run faster because our body has had that change in the altitude, and we've had really good training. But with the mask, it does work. Do not mouth breathe when you put the mask on. and maybe have somebody write some kind of program for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people and they're putting masks and devices on, and what I don't recommend are the devices where they're in your mouth and you're sucking air through your mouth. So the mask we have, and I don't, it's not a sales pitch. The Oxygen Advantage mask it's great. It does work. I have an ultra marathon client. She's training, she's done loads of runs, and she's done it with OA training, Oxygen Advantage, but we don't use the mask. We use the simple protocols of reducing air intake and air hunger, and then the really big breath retention, so where you're holding your breath and you're moving, and we can only start prescribing that when we start to see things like the Bolt score and how people are training and recovering. But you're right, there is science. It does work, and they are great.
It's really particular as well, because I remember we did the course and I was like, okay, cool, I walk my dog every day, so I'll hold my nose and I'll try and take 20 steps and I'll see this oxygen hunger, but it's literally like you're twitching,
you're tired from kicking.
And I was like, you know what, I just want to relax when I'm walking my dog.
Exactly.
I'm not doing that. I think I've tried it maybe twice or 3 times and I was like, nah.
I love that you said that, Keith, because most people, they just need to take a walk and give their mouth closed. My dog died in December, but I still walk. And
sorry to hear that. What was your dog's name?
It was Loco.
Yeah.
Big white shepherd.
Yeah,
we've all had our dogs here. But I will purposely walk and I'll leave the phone at home. And I will try not to talk to anyone, because some people go out for walks and they're like, I take my friend and I da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, no, the purpose of this is you close your mouth, you walk and you take in your surroundings, and you can deal with nature, but that's your nasal breathing. That's your breathing exercise.
Yeah.
So there isn't, some people go off and they want to do more and more protocols, but it's quite basic. Get your mouth closed, sleep well, train and exercise well. We're not training for the Olympics, we'll dream, but it's like, get yourself to a good level of fitness and you're healthy. We don't have to go and do all these things. But if you are going to altitude, there's so many protocols you can do. And you send me crazy people who want to do big events.
Yeah, well, I get it. I have people asking me all the time in a comment or in a DM, I have this oxygen mask, or what can I do? Do these oxygen masks work? And I'm like, do you know what? They do work, but it's not just about banging it on and going for a run or going for a thing. You actually have to know what you're doing. So definitely contact Rose for that. Anybody listening, we do have loads of mountaineers people. I don't think they're quite there yet with that level of demands. There's a few people who I'd be like, this would be an option for you if you want to take your, pardon the pun, training to the next level. But for people doing Kilimanjaro and doing Everest Base Camp, it's like we've got much more benefit just by getting fit, just by being able to walk for 3 hours, not 2 hours, and then get some hill training at the end, as opposed to trying to get somebody. Because some people just like to find the extra hacks instead of just literally doing the hard hours. And it's like, listen, let's just do the hard hours first, and then when you get to a level, we can bring in the tech and the science. But where can people follow you and get in touch with you if we've stimulated anybody's? I'm
on Instagram. Follow Oxygen Advantage before me. There's loads of free information there. Rose B.O. Donovan on Instagram. I work in Joint Space on Tuesdays and Thursdays in Dubai, and I'm with Body Hack for Education. We deliver the Oxygen Advantage training. We're delivering a breathing workshop August 25th. Hiba and myself, when I say we, that one I definitely recommend, because there's another intake, there's another whole toolkit that Hiba gives that's opposite to what I give. So that's going to be a great workshop. And I'm here in Dubai.
Yeah, Hiba's amazing. Body Hack are amazing. But you also do online stuff. You can do some of this stuff virtually.
Yes, I have. I've got quite a few. I try to keep it as less as possible online work. But I've got people in the States. I've got people in Europe. And they range from anxiety and depression, sleep problems, all the way through to, the crazy sports performance. I want the hacks. I want to get fitter, stronger, faster without working hard.
At the top level, I'm like, okay, let's do it. But at the bottom level, I'm like, we can do other stuff first.
I'm general population, and it's just get the basics right. And science hasn't gone that far yet, Keith. It's like the basics are.
This is the old science.
Sleep a bit more, eat well, good relationships, exercise, more than 3 times a week, and breathe through your nose.
Yeah, amazing, cool. All right, well, Rose, thank you so much. Good luck with the rest of your dissertation, and when you get the world-changing, scientific, advancing results, we can chat about it again. I recommend everyone contact Rose, read those books, breathe through your nose, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Rose.
Thank you so much for having me.